So with that, we will move to remarks from each of us. And as chair, I will start. And I want to start with just a reiteration of thanks to each colleague, and also with a few thoughts about 2021 and 2020. Take that, 2020. That's what my sister, who's a doctor, said when she received her first dose of the COVID vaccine a week ago. In her words, I hear determination. The determination I saw last year in Arlington as we came together to face this pandemic. Determination to define 2020 by how we respond to COVID, not just how it impacts us. In Take That 2020, I also hear the challenges we'll have to tackle this year. I propose to focus on three themes: stabilization, recovery, and building a county and community that is systematically committed to racial and economic equity. First, stabilization. Just over 10 months ago, most of us had never heard the phrase social distance, hosted a Zoom, or worn a mask. Our lives have been completely upended. Last year, in our first meeting of 2020, the board was celebrating a decline in our office vacancy rate, and our budget prospects looked better than they had in years. We looked forward to a year of prosperity. Tonight, 1 year later, we are worried about our health, hunger, preventing evictions, and helping our children who have been distance learning and isolated from their friends for months and months. We can be proud of the work we did in 2020, as Ms. Garvey mentioned earlier. Our public health department and all of our employees, as well as our community, responded quickly, and we stayed home to flatten the curve so that our hospital and our healthcare system were not overwhelmed. Three other parts of our response last year stand out to me. First, the county helped more than 3,000 households avoid eviction by providing $7.2 million in rental support and more than $300,000 to help pay utility bills. The county also worked with Arlington Public Schools, the Arlington Food Assistance Center, our PTAs, the Cooperative for a Hunger-Free Arlington, and countless other organizations and individual Arlingtonians who stepped up to help those facing hunger and food insecurity. We also helped our businesses, working with our Industrial Development Authority in three business improvement districts, to provide grants of up to $10,000 to 394 Arlington businesses to help pay their employees, providing $2.8 million in funding. We can be also proud and deeply grateful for those on the front lines responding to the pandemic. From the bottom of my heart, and I know my colleagues, I want to add my thank you to all Arlington County employees for the work you did in 2020. As we turn the page to 2021, our healthcare response to COVID is clearly the biggest issue we face as a community. Our infection test positivity rate was 9.9% today, well above the 5% threshold the CDC uses to assess the risk of a surge. We face daily case and hospital counts as close to the highest that we've seen. We must get the vaccines out quickly to our healthcare workers, nursing home residents, essential workers, seniors, teachers, and eventually our community as a whole. And we cannot take our eyes off contact tracing, testing, and providing adequate healthcare directly for those in need where we need to. To stabilize our community, we must focus on health, but we must also prioritize hunger response and eviction prevention. When COVID began, 15,800 Arlington residents were unsure of where they would get their next meal in a given week. Those estimates are from our Department of Human Services. That's about 6.8% of our families and our neighbors. Today, the Capital Area Food Bank's estimate and AFAC's estimate as well is that we've seen a significant increase. Up to 26,000 Arlingtonians are at risk of hunger. That's a real challenge. Our fellow Arlingtonians in need, they're our neighbors and our families. Despite our efforts, gaps remain in our ability to serve those at risk of hunger. So to sustain the efforts of all our volunteers and partners and to build a stronger hunger response system, my chair's priority for the coming year will be addressing hunger and food insecurity. County Manager Mark Schwartz and Superintendent Dr. Francisco Duran, with the support of the county board and the school board, will be forming a hunger and food insecurity working group over the coming month to help us better address the gaps in our hunger response, racial inequities on hunger, and to better collaborate and coordinate so that we can maximize our resources to fight hunger. The working group will work with the newly hired food coordinator that we have just hired over the next 12 to 18 months. Thank you to colleagues for your support on this, and to you, Ms. Garvey, for your continued work through the COG Food Security Committee. Details on how Arlington residents can get involved will be announced over the coming month when we work towards announcing the working group. Helping those at risk of hunger goes hand in hand with those at risk of eviction, which was a shared priority of all of us on the board and staff, the county as a whole, in 2020. Each of us heard from many Arlingtonians worried about whether they could afford to pay rent last year. Our Department of Human Services, nonprofits, and so many partners have worked relentlessly to help thousands of Arlingtonians make it through 2020 without losing their homes. Over the next 6 months, helping those most in need of shelter must continue to be at the heart of how we measure ourselves as a community. Thank you, Mr. Karantonis, for stepping forward to work on part of these issues with our Tenant Landlord Commission, and to all colleagues for their support on this priority. My second theme after stabilization, the big first part, stabilization, the second part, and it will overlap, is recovery. Saying take that to 2020 is also about recovering and building back better and more equitably. Because as difficult as this winter is and will be, spring will come. More and more of us will be vaccinated, and a new Biden administration will lead our nation's recovery. Arlington's recovery will require full economic partnership between the county government and our businesses to navigate a drastically altered landscape. 38% of our businesses indicated in a survey we did ending in October that they're at risk of closing over the next 6 months. Now more than ever, we must support our hard-hit businesses and address office and retail vacancies. So as we work to recover economically, I want to issue a call to action from my heart to yours. Shop local in Arlington this year. Yes, there will be things you need delivered and you want delivered, but we want all our businesses to recover. But let's not forget the livelihoods at stake. Let's keep ordering from our restaurants and local businesses because you love your corner restaurant in Shirlington or the dry cleaner off Williamsburg or any Arlington business that needs your support. In addition to that call to action, we all know public schools are at the heart of our recovery. Our children will need to resume in-person learning and return to routines. The county will be supporting and partnering with Arlington Public Schools to address the pandemic's educational consequences and to help open safely. Specifically, we will support our school board and superintendent as they move through the phases in the return to school plan and provide additional educational resources as able to close opportunity gaps. My commitment to that goal comes from my own experience as a teacher. I will work to find the resources our schools need to help our students harmed by the pandemic. Part of that work is addressing digital equity and broadband access. And on this, thanks to you, Mr. Dorsey, for your early and committed leadership and continuing leadership, I should say. In 2021, the county took numerous steps. Mr. Schwartz was a key part of it, as was our staff as a whole. We invested $500,000 to help serve the many up to 8,000 APS students who live in low to moderate income households. In 2021, we will work to accelerate our efforts to make broadband affordable and accessible for all Arlington residents. Along with our economy and our schools, I also believe missing middle housing must be part of the recovery we need. I want to be really clear about what I mean when I say missing middle housing. Missing middle is a type of housing: duplexes, townhomes, low-rise garden-style apartments, and modest mid-rise apartments near our population corridors that can help make the costs of home ownership in Arlington more affordable, so that the many people who live here and want to stay but currently can't afford a home have a chance to buy. Missing middle is necessary because the status quo on housing is not sustainable. Arlington continues to be a very desirable place to live. The cost of buying a home has increased over the last 10 to 15 years relative to wages because demand has been far greater than supply. That means that without changes in our housing supply, the 60% of Arlington residents who are renters cannot realistically save up to buy a place. We risk becoming as unaffordable as San Francisco over time if we do not plan for replacement of existing moderately priced housing and grow in a thoughtful, managed way. Missing middle housing is also inextricably linked for me to the inclusive, equitable recovery we need. The median income for white households in Arlington is $134,000 a year, more than double that of black households, which is $58,000 a year. Think about that, more than double. That's not right, and I would argue it's not happenstance. Arlington's decision to prohibit row houses for more than 25 years, I believe, contributes to that inequity. We must adopt policies and plan for a different, more equitable future. I am grateful for each of your support on Missing Middle, and to you, Ms. Crystal, for stepping forward as a liaison to lead on this. My third, last theme is systemic equity for 2021. I hear in the phrase, "Take that 2020, a challenge to us all to recognize and reckon with our failures with respect to racial and economic equity. In 2020, millions of us, millions of Americans, including many in Arlington, took to the streets to demand that we do better. We must and we will. In 2020, we adopted body-worn cameras for our police, sheriffs, and select fire personnel. We established our police practices group and expect to have their recommendations early this year. We appointed a chief race and equity officer who is committed to creating a county where everyone sees themselves in the work we do. We adopted a framework for implementing restorative justice and launched dialogues on racial equity. We set in motion processes for renaming Lee Highway, changing our logo, and renaming streets, buildings, and public spaces, whose names just don't align with our community's commitment to racial equity. In 2021, our challenge will be to see these initiatives through with determination to rise to a new status quo, a status quo that creates systemic equity on the work we started in 2020 and the other priorities I've identified: health, hunger, eviction prevention, economic recovery, our schools, and missing middle. As we work toward that systemic equity, my priorities for the fiscal year 2020 budget will be providing essential services to those most in need, maintaining core services for resident health and safety, and laying the foundation for our economic recovery. I will work my heart out to avoid laying off staff. I will also want to be honest with you, though, that we are in a very tight budget this year, and even tighter fiscal year 2022 with a $56 million projected deficit. In light of that shortfall, we have to focus on what we must do and those most in need. On our environment, we've made progress over the past 2 years. It's one of the reasons I ran for the board, and I continue to support 100% renewable electricity by 2035 and look forward to the implementation framework for our community energy plan. I also support the plastic bag fee and our recycling goals. I want to close where I began with the phrase, "Take that 2020," and a picture of where I think we are at the start of 2021. The COVID vaccines are the light at the end of a very long tunnel. You might have seen that sort of tunnel on the Blue Ridge Parkway or on a train or perhaps in a movie. We don't know how long it will be until we reach the light. 6 months, 8 months, perhaps shorter or perhaps longer. But we do know now that we will get there. If we keep distributing vaccines, social distancing, washing our hands, and wearing masks, we will get as many Arlingtonians as possible to that post-COVID light. I'm asking all of us to work together to meet those challenges we face with commitment, purpose, and kindness as we stabilize, recover, and build systemic racial and economic equity. Thank you.